Hey everyone, welcome. Today we're taking a really exciting deep dive into the underlying strategies of medical innovation. We're going to explore a pretty fascinating framework outlined by intellectual property lawyer and TRIZ expert Ave Ali Chausholo. If you've ever wondered exactly how engineers and doctors solve those seemingly impossible problems to save lives, well, you're in the right place. Get ready to look at healthcare through a completely new lens. So, our guide for this explainer is the comprehensive book, TRIZ in the Health and Medical Sector. Now, you might already know that TRIZ is a renowned problem-solving methodology, but applying it to healthcare, that is a uniquely tough challenge. Today, we're going to use this source material to understand exactly how the TRIZ framework serves as the ultimate tool for solving those impossible choices in medicine. We'll see how it perfectly balances really strict regulations with the urgent need for life-saving advancements. Here's our clinical roadmap for this explainer. 1. Why healthcare differs. 2. Medical devices. 3. Clinic time-saving. 4. Pharma innovations. And 5. AI and digital health. All right, let's just jump right in.
Section 1. Why healthcare differs. A unique challenge.
Okay, so consider this stark contrast for a second. If a car manufacturer tests a new feature and it completely fails, the worst-case scenario is usually, customer dissatisfaction or maybe a big recall. But if a medical device fails, human life is literally and immediately at risk. This fundamental difference means every single medical innovation out there is strictly bound by that rule of first do no harm. It makes innovation absolutely necessary, for sure, but incredibly difficult to pull off.
And really, that brings us to the core concept of the TRIZ methodology, the contradiction, or çelişki in Turkish. In healthcare, almost every time you try to improve one thing, you inevitably push another parameter right to the breaking point. Think about it. You want to make a drug more effective? Well, you often end up increasing the toxic side effects. You want a safer device? Suddenly it's way too expensive for most patients. The TRIZ framework is designed to systematically solve these high-stakes trade-offs rather than just settling for some middle-of-the-road compromise.
Section 2. Medical device breakthroughs. Let's actually look at how this plays out in the real world with some massive contradictions in medical device design. Historically, if you think of something like a pacemaker, it desperately needed to be small enough to fit inside a patient's chest, but it also had to be packed with redundant safety systems and big batteries. So how do you systematically solve those kinds of physical paradoxes? Well, let's look at this brilliant global case study regarding minimally invasive surgical tools. The contradiction here was pretty clear. Surgeons obviously wanted smaller incisions to reduce patient trauma, but shrinking the physical tool meant it couldn't transmit enough force to actually cut or grip effectively during the procedure. The TRIZ solution here utilized the principles of nesting and dynamics. What they did was create a telescopic arm system. It's highly compact when it's entering the body, but then it dynamically opens up during the actual operation with independent joint control. The result? A massive 60% reduction in incision size with literally zero loss in force transmission. That cut patient recovery time down from 5 days to just 1.5 days. Incredible, right? Here's another fantastic example from a Turkish case study on a portable EKG device. The contradiction this time? Making the device small and portable made its plastic body way too fragile. But if you reinforce it, it becomes too heavy to actually carry around easily. So by applying the TRIZ principles of composite materials and local quality, the engineers completely stopped trying to use just one material for the whole device. Instead, they localized the materials. They used tough carbon fiber only at the specific impact points, and a really lightweight polymer everywhere else. Every zone was optimized separately. This clever solution actually reduced the overall weight by 35% while tripling its drop resistance, allowing it to easily get its CE certification. So a really crucial point here is that TRIZ doesn't just solve physical shape problems, it solves cost problems too. Take the development of a low-cost blood sugar monitor. The contradiction here was that highly accurate sensors are just too expensive for widespread use, but cheap sensors, they give dangerous out-of-tolerance results. You can't have that. Using the TRIZ tools of cheap object plus feedback, they actually manufactured incredibly cheap single-use sensor strips, but they paired them with a really smart software calibration algorithm to instantly compensate for the hardware's inaccuracy. This ingenious combination of cheap hardware and smart software resulted in a dramatic 70% reduction in device cost. But most importantly, it still maintained perfect ISO accuracy standards. That rapidly expanded healthcare access to over 2 million patients in Turkey who previously just couldn't afford it. That is the real power of resolving a contradiction.
Section 3. Clinic time-saving. Optimizing processes.
Hospital wait times aren't just a minor inconvenience. They are quite literally a matter of life and death. In emergency room triage, there's this terrifying clash: speed
versus safety. Evaluating patients faster obviously increases the risk of a fatal misdiagnosis or misclassification, but taking the time to evaluate everyone slowly means your critical patients are just left out there waiting. A hospital in Turkey applied the TRIZ principles of dynamism and feedback to solve this huge bottleneck. They introduced a dynamic algorithm that instantly weighed patient vital signs in real time. This software automatically and safely classified all the low-risk cases, meaning the human nurses only had to spend their valuable time evaluating the high-risk ones.
The impact of this was just immediate and totally stunning. The average triage time plummeted from 8 minutes down to just 2.5 minutes. And not only did misclassifications drop by 80%, but the wait time for the absolute most critical patients to receive their first intervention was actually reduced by 35%.
And this kind of efficiency translates straight over to the most expensive room in the entire hospital, the operating room. Every single minute an OR sits empty during cleaning is a massive cost, and it delays patients who are anxiously waiting for surgery. The contradiction is, well, you can't rush sterilization, right? So using the principles of continuity of useful action and prior prep, a hospital implemented this clever parallel preparation turnstile system. While one surgery was wrapping up, the next entire team and patient were already fully prepped in a separate staging room. This allowed them to cycle in immediately the second the cleaning was done.
This turnaround optimization dropped the downtime between surgeries from 68 minutes to just 22 minutes. That single change increased their daily surgery capacity by 35%, which ended up generating a staggering 4.2 million Turkish lira in extra annual revenue. And they did all of that without building a single new operating room.
Section 4. Pharma Innovations. Efficacy versus side effect. Now, let's talk about pharma. This brilliantly illustrates the classic chemotherapy contradiction. The drug is incredibly effective at killing cancer cells, but it indiscriminately attacks healthy tissue at the same time. By leveraging the TRIZ principles of turn harm to benefit and nesting, researchers found a way to safely encapsulate those highly toxic drug molecules inside tiny nanoparticles. It's basically like a microscopic Trojan horse. They circulate completely harmlessly through the body until they encounter the specific acidic microenvironment of a tumor. Only then do they activate and release the drug. This nesting strategy increased tumor targeting by a massive 400% while drastically dropping those awful toxic side effects.
But here's the thing. Even the absolute best drug fails if the patient doesn't actually take it. For chronic diseases, if a patient has to remember to take a pill 3 or 4 times a day, compliance drops below 50%. It's a huge problem in medicine. The TRIZ solution here was periodic action and parameter change. Instead of relying on the patient's memory, pharmaceutical engineers just changed the physical parameters of the pill itself. They created this microcapsule matrix where tiny capsules, all with completely different physical dissolution rates, were combined into one single tablet. This provided a slow, gradual release over a full 24 hours.
Just by changing that one physical delivery parameter to a single daily dose, patient compliance absolutely skyrocketed from a dismal 48% up to an impressive 89%. And because they were actually taking the medication, the overall treatment efficacy jumped by 34%.
Section 5. AI in Digital Health. Explainable Diagnostics.
Okay, for our final topic, I really want you to consider this high-stakes question. We now have deep learning AI models that can actually out-diagnose human specialists, but they operate as a complete black box. So the contradiction is this. As the diagnostic accuracy increases, the system itself becomes way too complex for a human doctor to interpret. Think about it. If an AI tells a surgeon to operate, but it literally cannot explain why, the surgeon simply isn't going to trust it, right?
To solve this black box contradiction in a retina disease diagnostic AI, developers looked to the TRIZ principle of color change combined with feedback. What they did was add a visual layer to the software called GradCam. Now, whenever the AI makes a diagnosis, it projects a color heat map right over the patient's eye scan, literally highlighting the exact pixels that led to its decision. Instantly, this wildly complex model was converted into a trusted, explainable AI system. Just by adding that color feedback, clinicians' trust in the AI boosted by 40%, and the system was successfully piloted across 14 different hospitals in Turkey.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a provocative thought. We've seen exactly how a structured methodology like TRIZ can systematically dismantle these massive contradictions in device design, hospital workflows, and pharmaceuticals. As algorithms grow even more powerful, will our ultimate medical breakthroughs come from raw computing power alone, or will they come from rigorous human frameworks like TRIZ directing that AI to actually solve the right contradictions? It's a pretty fascinating future to consider. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you want to dive deeper into these incredible case studies, I highly encourage you to check out Ave Ali Chavush Ogla's source material. Keep learning, and we'll see you next time.